My wife cheated on me with our neighbor. Then after I caught them, she secretly forged my signature on a $250, $0 refinance to buy a second house. Now she's trying to take everything while I'm left with nothing but debts and betrayal. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this. But here I am. The most unexpected thing happened. My wife, Lisa, the woman I thought I knew inside out, turned out to be cheating on me with our neighbor, Tom. And that wasn't even the worst part. No, the real punch to the gut was discovering she'd forged my signature on a $250, $0 refinance to buy a second house, and now she's trying to take everything I have while I'm left drowning in debts and betrayal. Let me back up a bit. Lisa and I have been married for about 8 years. We met in college, and I always thought we had a solid, normal relationship. She was the kind of wife who'd cook dinner, complain about her boss, and occasionally get into petty fights over money or stupid stuff. But she was also charming, funny, and seemed genuinely invested in our life together. We built a decent life, good jobs, a nice house, a couple of cars. Nothing extravagant, but it was ours. At first, I didn't notice anything wrong. But over the past 6 months, small things started creeping in. She'd be secretive about her phone, texting late at night, and when I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd brush me off, say it was just work stuff or her sister. She started dressing differently, wearing more makeup, and staying out later than usual. I brushed it off, told myself I was imagining things. Maybe she was just stressed from work or tired of the routine. Then came the day I saw her phone light up with a message from Tom, our neighbor. It was a simple message, but the tone was too familiar, too flirtatious. I saw her quickly delete it when she entered the room. That was the first real crack in the facade. I decided to keep an eye on her, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. A couple of weeks later, I noticed she was acting weird around the house. She was colder, more dismissive. She'd leave her phone on silent and hide it when I entered the room. She'd also start taking calls in the bathroom or outside, which wasn't like her. I found myself feeling paranoid, but I didn't want to confront her without proof. Then one night I decided to check her phone when she was asleep. I know, bad move, but I couldn't help myself. I found a series of texts between her and Tom, flirty messages, plans to meet up, talk about getting away for a weekend. My stomach dropped. I felt sick. The worst part was the way she lied about everything when I confronted her the next morning, insisting she'd never cheated, that Tom was just a friend and I was overreacting. She called me paranoid, insecure. That made me furious, but I had enough. I started digging deeper, looking into bank statements, emails, anything I could find. That's when I stumbled on the real bombshell. An email from her bank account confirming a refinance loan for a second house, an extra property I never knew about. I looked closer and saw it was for $250, $0. The thing is, she forged my signature on the paperwork. She'd been planning this behind my back for months, maybe longer. I couldn't believe it. Not only was she cheating on me with Tom, but she was also trying to take everything I worked for. That moment, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach hundreds of times. I thought I knew her. I thought we had trust. Turns out she'd been lying and scheming right under my nose. I felt betrayed, angry, and helpless all at once. I kept calm and confronted her again, this time with the evidence. Her reaction was infuriating. She everything said I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, and that she loved me. She even threw in some tears, claiming I was ruining our marriage over nothing. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying, cheating, and stealing from me. That's when I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to figure out what to do next, but I knew my world was crumbling. I'll leave it there for now. Do you want me to keep going? After that confrontation, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. The rage was there, sure, but mostly it was a crushing sense of betrayal. How could she do this? Lisa had always acted like she was the victim, crying about how stressed she was, how I didn't understand her, how she just needed some space. But the truth was, she'd been sneaking around, lying, and now she was trying to take my house, my savings, everything I'd worked for. It was like waking up to a nightmare. I started digging into her phone and emails more. I needed to understand her plan, her mindset. That's when I found the emails with the bank, the fake signatures, the documents she'd forged. She'd gone behind my back for months planning to buy a second house without telling me and using my name, my signature to get the loan approved. That's when I realized the extent of her deception. This wasn't just an affair, she was actively trying to steal my future. I felt sick thinking about what she'd done. The house we lived in, the life we built, she was planning to take it all. I couldn't let her get away with that. I decided I had to act fast. I couldn't just sit back and let her walk away with everything I'd worked so hard for. I started talking to a lawyer the next day. I needed to understand my rights, what she was up to, and how to stop her from taking everything. Meanwhile, Lisa kept lying, spinning her web of bullshit. She'd say I was paranoid, that I was crazy to think she'd do something like that. She even accused me of cheating, which was laughable given her own behavior. I knew she was lying, but it was frustrating how easily she could manipulate the situation, how she could sit there and deny everything even when I had proof. Her attitude was bitchy, dismissive, like she thought she was untouchable. One day she tried to gaslight me completely. She told me she was just trying to fix things, that she loved me and wanted our marriage to work. But her actions told a different story. She was sneaking around, forging documents, trying to buy a house behind my back. I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every time I looked at her, I saw a stranger, someone who'd lied to my face for months. The emotional toll was huge. I was angry, devastated, and deeply hurt. I felt stupid for trusting her, for believing she was the woman I married, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to protect myself, my rights, and my future. I knew I needed to gather all the evidence I could, bank statements, emails, her phone records, and prepare for what was coming. I also started thinking about the bigger picture. She was planning to take everything, our house, our savings, even our retirement plans. The amount of money involved was staggering, and I knew she was counting on my ignorance or naivety to pull this off. But I wasn't going to let her. Not without a fight, so I made a plan. First, I'd get legal help. Second, I'd confront her again with all the evidence. And third, I'd decide whether to fight for the marriage or cut my losses. Honestly, I was leaning toward divorce. She'd betrayed me so deeply I couldn't see any way to fix this. But I needed to see what the law said first. While all this was happening, she kept up her act of innocence, acting like I was the crazy one. She'd say she loved me, cry, and then go right back to her lies. I could see the contempt in her eyes sometimes, like she thought she was smarter than everyone else. That made me even more determined to take her down. She'd underestimated me, and now she was going to regret it. I spent the next few days gathering every piece of paper, every email, every text message that could prove her scheme. I was furious, but I also knew I had to stay calm. If I let my emotions take over, I'd lose control. I needed to be smart, methodical. I started to realize that this wasn't just about money or the house. It was about my dignity, my trust, my entire life being turned upside down by someone I thought I knew. That's where I am now. I've got a lawyer, a mountain of evidence, and a fire in my belly. I don't know exactly how this is going to end, but I do know I won't let her walk away with everything. I'll fight for what's mine, and I'll make sure she pays for the betrayal. Let me know if you want me to keep going. The day I sat down with my lawyer was the day I realized how deep I was in. He looked over the evidence I'd compiled, emails, bank statements, copies of the forged documents, and his face got serious. He told me that Lisa's scheme was more than just a betrayal. It was outright fraud. She forged my signature on the refinanced documents, and that could be grounds for criminal charges if I decided to pursue that route. But more urgently, I needed to understand how to stop her from taking the house and the money she'd tried to steal. The lawyer explained that since she'd forged my signature, the loan could be invalidated and her legal claim to the second house could be challenged. But that wasn't easy. She'd already transferred a lot of money and she was trying to hide her tracks. Still, I had enough evidence to make a strong case that she was acting in bad faith, trying to defraud me and the bank. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act. She'd come home pretending everything was fine, acting like I was overreacting. She'd say I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of things she didn't do. Her tone was bitchy, condescending, dismissive, and she'd throw in little lies here and there to try to cover her tracks. She told me she was just stressed, that I was reading too much into things and that I needed to trust her. But I could see through her. Her eyes told a different story. She was nervous, anxious, and desperate. One night I caught her in a lie. She said she was out with her sister, but I found a receipt from a hotel downtown, an expensive one, dated the same night she claimed she was with her sister. I confronted her and her face went pale. She tried to brush it off, saying it was just a business trip, but I knew better. She was with Tom, no doubt about it. The fact that she was so bad at hiding it only made me angrier. That's when I decided I had to take more serious action. I contacted a forensic accountant to trace the money she'd stolen, and I started drafting a legal complaint to freeze her assets. I wanted to stop her from selling or transferring anything else. I knew she was trying to cover her tracks, but I was determined to stay one step ahead. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I was losing my mind at times. The woman I loved, the woman I shared my life with, turned out to be a liar and a thief. It's one thing to suspect betrayal, but it's another to have proof, hard, undeniable evidence. Every time I saw her, I felt a mix of disgust and heartbreak. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I kept asking myself if I'd missed all the signs, if I'd been blind to her true nature all along. As I delved deeper, I started to see how calculated her moves were. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The second house was just the tip of the iceberg. I found emails where she discussed how she'd get rid of me once she had the money, how she'd make it look like an accident if I ever found out. The thought made my stomach turn. I felt like I'd been played for a fool, and now I was fighting just to keep what was mine. I also learned that she'd been secretly withdrawing money from our joint account, funneling it into her own accounts. She'd been using the second house as leverage, trying to leverage my supposed trust against me. I realized that her plan was to cut me out completely once she had control of everything. That's when I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to salvage anything. I couldn't let her get away with this. I started to prepare for the worst, thinking about divorce, about fighting her in court, about how I'd rebuild my life if that's what it took. I wasn't going to go down without a fight. I had to protect myself, my rights, and my future. I couldn't let her destroy everything we'd built over her lies and greed. The strange thing was, despite all the anger and betrayal, I still felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to stay strong, stay smart, and not let her manipulate me anymore. I'd been naive once, but no more. I was done being the victim. From now on, I was going to fight for what's rightfully mine, no matter how hard it got. If you want me to keep going, just say so. The next few days were a whirlwind. I had my lawyer draw up the necessary documents to freeze her assets and put a temporary restraining order on her trying to sell or transfer any property. I knew she was desperate, and I had to act fast before she could spin more lies or hide her tracks. The thing about Lisa is she's always been good at manipulation, but now she was panicking. I could see it in her eyes, the way she'd snap at me over nothing, the way she'd try to guilt-trip me into trusting her, all while secretly scheming behind my back. One evening she came home late, more bitchy than usual. Her face was tense and she was acting like she owned the place. I stood there calm but firm and told her I knew everything about the affair, the forged documents, the second house. Her eyes widened and her lips pressed into a thin line. She tried to deny it, of course, but I had the evidence. I laid out the emails, the bank statements, the receipts. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started yelling that I was crazy, that I was accusing her of stupid stuff, that I was just insecure. I didn't flinch. I told her I was done playing her game, that I knew she'd been lying to my face for months, that I knew she'd been cheating on me with Tom, and that she'd forged my signature to buy that second house. Her face went red with anger and she started crying, fake tears, I knew, trying to turn it around and make me feel guilty. But I wasn't buying it. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I was going to take her to court, and that she wasn't going to get away with stealing my house or my money. Her reaction was pure bitch mode. She screamed at me that I was ruining everything, that I was crazy, and that she'd fight me to the end. She said she loved me, but I could see her eyes. They were cold, calculating. She was already planning her next move. I realized then that she'd been planning to screw me over from the start, and now she was just trying to save face. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I'd trusted her, loved her, and she'd repaid me with lies and theft. I kept thinking about all the nights I'd come home exhausted, only to find her hiding something, talking to Tom, or lying about where she'd been. It made me sick. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this coming? How could I have been so blind? But despite the pain, I knew I had to keep my head clear. I had to protect myself and my assets. I reached out to a forensic accountant again, asking him to trace every dollar she'd taken or transferred. I also hired a private investigator to follow her, just to be sure she wasn't trying to do something even more reckless. The last thing I wanted was for her to sell the house or move money around without me knowing. In the meantime, I started talking to a divorce lawyer. I wanted to understand what I could realistically fight for and how to handle her attempts to steal everything. She'd already forged my signature on the refinance documents, which was a felony, but I knew she'd try to claim I'd consented or agreed to everything. I had to be prepared for a long legal battle. Still, I was determined. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I also began to think about the bigger picture. My entire life I've been about stability, trust, and building something real. Now all of that was in jeopardy because of her greed and lies. It was a gut punch, but it also lit a fire in me. I was sick of being the victim. I decided I'd fight her every step of the way, take her to court, expose her lies, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. There was a strange sense of clarity amid the chaos. I realized I'd been naive, but I also knew I had the strength to get through this. I'd rebuild if I had to. I'd start fresh. I'd learn from this nightmare and I'd come out stronger. I just had to hold on, stay smart, and never let her manipulate me again. If you want me to keep going, just say so. The legal process moved faster than I expected, which was a relief, but also a wake-up call. Lisa was trying to fight back, claiming I was controlling and crazy, and that she had every right to buy the second house since she was the one working hard. She threw every sob story she could find, acting like she was the victim. But I had the evidence and I was ready to use it. The court hearings were intense. Lisa showed up in a designer dress, acting like she was the innocent wife who'd been wronged. She lied through her teeth, claiming I was abusive, paranoid, and that she was only doing everything for the good of the family. The judge wasn't buying her crocodile tears. My lawyer presented the forged documents, the emails, the bank statements. The judge ordered a temporary freeze on her assets and a halt to any sale or transfer of the second house. That was a huge win, but I knew it was just the beginning. Lisa's attitude only got bitchier. She'd call me names, accuse me of ruining her life, and insist she was the real victim. She tried to turn the court against me, saying I was trying to control her, but I stayed calm. I knew her game. She was desperate, and she was trying to manipulate her way out of it, but I wasn't falling for it. Meanwhile, I kept digging. The forensic accountant uncovered more money she'd siphoned off. She transferred hundreds of thousands into accounts under her control. She'd even tried to open new credit lines in my name, which I immediately blocked. I filed for a full divorce, citing her fraud, her affair, and her attempts to steal everything. I was done pretending everything was okay. I was done being the naive guy who trusted his wife. My heart was heavy, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I'd been betrayed so deeply, but now I had a shot at justice. I started thinking about rebuilding my life from scratch. I'd sell the house, pay off my debts, and start over. I didn't want her to have any part of my future. That meant cutting all ties and moving on. The emotional toll was massive. I kept replaying every moment, the good times, the lies, the nights I thought I was crazy for suspecting her. I wondered how I missed all the signs, but I also knew I had to focus on the present and the future. I couldn't change the past, but I could decide what came next. I was determined to come out of this stronger, smarter, and more cautious. The final blow came when the judge officially ordered her to return the forged documents and cease all attempts to claim the second house. She was furious, calling me all sorts of names, but I didn't care. I'd fought for what was rightfully mine, and I'd won some measure of justice. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protecting myself from her lies and greed. Now I'm in the process of finalizing the divorce. I've started counseling, trying to deal with the heartbreak and betrayal. It's not easy. Every day is a struggle to trust again, to rebuild my confidence, but I know I'll get through it. I've learned a lot from this nightmare about trust, deception, and the importance of protecting yourself. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs sooner, but I also realize that sometimes you only find out the truth when everything falls apart. My advice to anyone in a similar situation: stay vigilant, document everything, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. People can surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways, but you have to be willing to stand up, even when it hurts. Because in the end, justice isn't just about winning money or property. It's about reclaiming your dignity and peace of mind. If you want me to keep going, just ask. It's been a long, brutal road, but I finally feel like I'm starting to breathe again. The divorce is finalized, and I've managed to get most of my life back on track. The house is sold, the debts are being paid off, and I've cut all ties with Lisa. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever fully trust again, but I've learned a lot, mostly that you can't take anything for granted, especially not the people closest to you. Looking back, I realize how much I was by her lies. I was blind to the signs of her manipulation, her greed, her betrayal. I kept telling myself she was just stressed or tired, but the truth was she was planning her escape, her new life, while I was clueless. The moment I found those texts, those forged documents, everything changed. It was like waking up from a nightmare I'd been living in for months. What hurts the most is knowing she lied to my face every step of the way. She'd cry, she'd swindle, and she'd spin stories to make herself look innocent. It's a sick feeling, realizing the person you loved and trusted was capable of such deception. But I also learned that I can survive this. I can pick up the pieces, rebuild, and come out stronger. One thing I'll never forget is how she tried to manipulate the court, how she played the victim, trying to turn everyone against me. But I stayed calm, stayed focused, and let the evidence speak for itself. That's what ultimately saved me. The truth always surfaces, no matter how good someone thinks they are at hiding it. I won't lie. There are days when I feel empty, when I wonder if I'll ever fully trust again. But I also know that I'm better off without her. I deserve someone honest, someone who respects me. And I've learned to value myself more, to see the warning signs early, and to never let anyone manipulate me again. If there's one thing I want others to take from this, it's this: don't ignore the red flags, no matter how small. Trust your instincts, keep proof of everything, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Because sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most. But in the end, the truth will come out and you'll find a way to move forward. I don't regret the pain because it's made me understand what really matters: truth, integrity, and self-respect. I may be battered, but I'm still standing. And I'm finally starting to believe that I can build a better future, free from betrayal and lies. That's what matters most now.